Awesome. So I'll kick it off. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming, and excited today to be joined by AlphaShares, Tyler, one of the founders, right? And correct me if I'm wrong.
That is correct.
Perfect. Yeah, joined by one of the founders here today to talk about AlphaShares and what they got cooking, their newest sale, their NFT sale that's kicking off, and it's already halfway sold out. So kind of just jump right into it, Tyler, if you want to go into who you are, what is AlphaShares, and just give us a little bit of a lowdown.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Well, my name is Tyler. As you mentioned, I am a co-founder of AlphaShares and everything that we have going on. Specifically, we're here to talk about Alpha Mining Co., which is one of our ventures underneath the AlphaShares umbrella. The AlphaShares name is really our brand, and so we have multiple products and services that fall underneath it. First one that kind of put us on the map, if you will, was our marketplace that we launched a little over a year ago. NFT marketplace, and that was how we kind of got our foot in the door with other NFT projects, and also have moved down the line of vertically integrating our own NFT collections under our marketplace and utilizing them to pursue unique opportunities. And the most unique opportunity that we're pursuing recently is our Bitcoin mining operations down in Paraguay. And so I'm here to talk about that, let you guys know more about what that all means, how it all works, and how you could get involved if you're interested in doing so, and what makes us different and better than any other Bitcoin mining project that's out there that uses NFTs to fractionalize ownership.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Give a little bit of history with AlphaShares. How long have you guys been around?
So we've been around since February of 2022. So we are actually even coming up here in, what would that be, in about 4 months? We'll be at 2 years old, which is kind of crazy in this space, especially for all the projects that popped up at the tail end of the bull market from
Uh-huh.
2020, 2021, and 2022. But we're really happy that we're still around. We're really happy that we've been building as hard as we can during this bear market. Sometimes it's a little aggravating, sometimes it's a little disheartening. There's not a lot of liquidity and activity in the market in a bear market, but I personally think it's the best time to build because it's the hardest time to build. You have the least amount of competition though, and you're able to establish your foundation before the bull market comes back. And that's really when I think we all can have a lot of fun. But we really need those hardcore and to the core projects that are building during a period of time when other projects are either giving up or people are just kind of lagging and not wanting to build, which has really helped us grow our community. And so our community consistently grows, has continued to grow over the bear market, and we're really, really happy to see it. So yeah, that's how long we've been around for. The Bitcoin mining operation has been around in terms of its first launch of our first collection that has sold out. We raised $3 million with that. That one launched in
Gee.
March. What's currently minting is our expansion plan. So this is a collection that basically expands upon the current deployment of Bitcoin miners and grows the farm. And we've been pursuing this since about a year as well. I first went down to Paraguay in October 2nd of 2022. And it's now been a little bit over a year since we first started to explore the opportunity. We pushed it out in March, and we got our first bits of machinery up in, uh, I guess, July
Nice.
or
Man, that
August, I
must
guess.
feel good. Yeah,
It
that
does feel
must feel
good, but
awesome.
it has been a massive undertaking, though. So it feels great, but it has been a huge learning experience to understand, who you want to play with, who you don't want to play with in the space. What are the correct paths to go down to purchase equipment at a good cost, but also get it to your facility in a quick
Mhm.
period of time. So it's been a big learning experience, but it's awesome to now know that we have, nearly right now $1 million worth of equipment that's hashing, and more on the way.
Oh, so you guys are actually already established and running right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we are actually making our first Bitcoin distribution to holders of the reserve NFTs that were that $3 million raise that started in March, and that first distribution is going out today. And so that's actually zero point 0.7 Bitcoin that's going to be split up
Nice.
amongst the people that hold those NFTs.
Hell yeah, congratulations. That's actually really cool, and big congratulations for sticking around for so long and continuing to pull through and just continue to build, because obviously, yeah, we see that a lot within the space over the last like 5 years, where it's, you see projects come up for a few months and then disappear, and then projects come up and then disappear, and it's just kind of like a cycle. So being able to kind of establish yourself and continue to build and grow on the same brand and not just kind of like fork off, create 20 different projects or something, and do the classic dev maneuvers that a lot of other projects do. So no, that's really cool, and it's nice to see you guys got all established. You're up and running, so I think it's a big step. And as I said before, it must feel great to finally have it all running, especially since it's been about a year since you first went down there, since
Oh
October
yeah.
2nd. Yeah, that's really
Oh
cool.
yeah. No, I really do appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment. It's awesome. It is absolutely amazing. But if you want, I could talk about why we chose Paraguay.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. So, basically, why Paraguay? What happened there? What made you want to go there? And what's so great about it?
So Paraguay happens to just be the Goldilocks country for Bitcoin mining. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you're looking for a place to mine Bitcoin, you're looking for two things. You're looking for an abundance of power, and you're also looking for cost effective, cheap power. And typically, those things are mutually exclusive where you cannot find them together. In first world countries, very developed countries like where you are in Canada, myself in the United States, many of our holders in the UK, power is abundant there, and that's because they've been very the countries are very, very built out. The infrastructure is there, but that also means that there are so many hands that power transfers through before it gets to the end consumer. You have wherever the power is produced, it then goes through some sort of company or country rather entity that is going to handle it, like an energy commission. Then it's going to
Hmm.
go to different distribution facilities. Then it's going to go to the power company. Then it's going to go to a substation. Then it's finally going to get to your meter. And by the time it gets to you, it's very expensive. And we see
Hmm.
power costs in first world countries being, 12 to 25 cents per kilowatt hour, which is traditional. And most people that even pay their utility bills, they're like, I have no idea how much I pay for power because it's just constant. It's a normal thing that people pay. But if we look at the numbers, it's between 12 and 25 cents a kilowatt hour. 12 is really the low end of what you can find in most first world countries. It's very difficult to find any cheaper than that. And I'm talking about residential. If you do have a business, sometimes you can get cheaper as an industrial rate. But sometimes your industrial rate will actually be more expensive than residential. So it really just depends, but
Hmm.
the average falls around that 12 to 20-cent mark. And so what we found is in Paraguay, or the second part of that though, is like I said, you're looking for cost-effective power and abundance of power. First world countries, they have an abundance, but it's expensive. If you flip the script and you go to countries where it's cheap, it's not abundant. You can find very, very cheap power in countries like North Korea. You can find it in very cheap in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, in Russia, in Ukraine. You can find it in a ton of areas where these countries are either impoverished, economically destroyed or disturbed, or they are just quite underdeveloped, and so you can find very small pockets of different energy production sites, whether it's flare gas or hydroelectric or dirty, where they're actually just pulling oil from the ground and burning that. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you go to those countries, the only reason it's cheap is because there is something wrong with their economy, whether they're a war torn country or so on and so forth. So you're more likely than not to get your equipment stolen and your operations to not even get off the ground. But in Paraguay, it's a perfect Goldilocks for some reason, and there is an actual real reason, and I'll get into that in a second. But it actually has a massive abundance of power, a very well built out energy grid, awesome infrastructure to supply power to the businesses and people that need it, and it's also very, very, very cheap. And when I talk about how cheap, it's for 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So we talked about in the United States and Canada and abroad, 12 to 20, maybe even 25 cents a kilowatt hour. We are at 3. And the reason for that is because the country of Paraguay actually holds the world's second largest hydroelectric dam. So the first world's largest is in China, the Three Gorges
Hmm.
Dam, and that was built in the 90s. But from the 70s to the 90s, the Itaipu Dam in Paraguay was the world's largest. It wasn't until the Three Gorges Dam was built that it was knocked to second place. But it still produces almost, and sometimes even more, energy than the Three Gorges Dam. And it produces so much energy that the country of Paraguay actually can't consume all of it. It can only consume about 10 to 30% of it, and then the rest has to be sold to their neighboring country, Brazil. And the reason for that is because in the 70s, when they constructed this dam, Brazil came in as the money partner. They said, hey, we need power. You have an amazing spot in your country to place this dam to take advantage of these massive riverways. And I know that you guys don't have the money, so we're going to come in and we're going to fund this for you. You're going to do the construction. You're going to have it within your borders, but we're going to pay for the construction. And in return, you're going to sell us back any power that you don't use because we anticipate you won't be able to use it all as a small country of Paraguay with a giant dam. And so, whatever you don't use, you're going to sell back to us at a very low cost. And that cost has been within their contract since the 70s in perpetuity moving forward for the rest of time. And that cost is $7 a megawatt, which is 0.007 cents per kilowatt hour. So 7/100ths of a cent. And we were just talking about how 3 cents per kilowatt hour is fantastic compared to the 12 to 20 in first world countries. But now we're talking about how they sell it to Brazil at 7/100ths of a cent per kilowatt hour. And that's due to many factors: inflation, the fact that this agreement was happening in the 70s. Regardless, now Paraguay is in the position where they have finished paying off their financing expense to Brazil. This actually happened within the past 6 months. And they are now incentivized, especially with the newest administration in Paraguay, to increase the amount of production, or not production, but consumption of power from the Itaipu Dam. Like I mentioned, it's 10 to 30% historically, and it's in their best interest to bring that number higher and higher. The more they can sell to their own country for their own country citizen and businesses to consume, they make so much more money than if they were to basically give it away to Brazil. So the
Hmm.
country's heavily incentivized to keep their power rate low and attractive, to generate interest, especially foreign investment, and to increase the amount of power they can provide to businesses and people. And so that's actually why, and I'll end my monologue here in a second, but that's why in the beginning of May, Bitmain themselves, the largest manufacturer of ASIC equipment, they went down to Paraguay. They visited the Itaipu Dam, and they said in a press release, Paraguay is going to be the new Bitcoin capital of the world because of all the awesome opportunities from their geographical location, that dam, all factors combined.
Damn. Man, that's awesome. That's literally, as you said, the Goldilocks. Yeah, that's like a perfect little perfect spot. That's actually crazy too with those numbers and figures. I'm an electrician, so I kind of understand the electricity needs and costs for things. And yeah, it's pretty crazy that they're only using 10 to 30%. Like they could really make some money by selling off the rest of that, in especially in their own country, to people who desperately need it, probably all around these different farms and all these different, little small locations, little lands. That's really
No,
cool.
and a lot of industry is popping up there as well. We purchased 5 acres of land to build out our operations in an industrial sector, and just north of the capital, Asuncion, and we're right next to a giant rock quarry. And that rock quarry consumes a ton of power, but more and more industrial type careers and industry is making its way down to Paraguay, because if there is something that has intense power usage, with many, many companies around the world, especially large industry organizations, they're looking to cut down on, for many benefits, whether that's political or whatnot, but cut down on the carbon footprint. And so
Hmm.
many facilities are moving to electronic equipment for most of their processing rather than, dirty coal, gas, or oil. And they are moving to Paraguay to get that done, because if they are moving to electronic driven equipment, then it makes sense for them to have the least amount of expense to run that equipment, which at the end of the day, it's power expense. That's the same
Yep.
reason we're down there for the Bitcoin mining equipment, because the only expense associated with mining Bitcoin is the power that you pull and consume to run the machines.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. This is a little side tangent here. I was watching a documentary on gold the other day, and they were going over this one mine, I think in the Congo. And what they do is, like, they needed like a lot of power to run the mine and run all their equipment. So they set up like a solar farm and some other stuff nearby, but they ended up
Mhm.
generating too much power, so they just decided to like start giving it out to the farms and stuff close by, and they do all their mining like remotely from like with a remote operated base, and then all the machines are just electronically controlled. I thought it was like really cool how they could do that and still be able to offer the power out and stuff. So I don't know. I
No,
thought
I
that was
love
really
that.
cool.
Well, and that's actually really, and I'm fine with going on a little side tangent on this too, because it's really fun to explore these things. And I've seen this happen a lot, and I think that, and I've even explored what would it look like if we ever built a solar farm, and what would that realized cost per kilowatt hour be? It's kind of difficult because you're converting the sunk cost of buying the different equipment you need for the solar farm into what's the lifetime of this, and then how much would I end up spending over this course of the lifetime? How can I represent that cost per kilowatt hour? It
Mhm.
becomes a little bit heady and difficult. But what a lot of people do to kind of offset that, and I know specifically like even Cadena Hashing, who has a facility out in um, Texas, they have a lot of solar energy and other renewable forms of energy. And they
Mhm.
store that energy when they're not using it or when it's producing more than they're consuming. And what happens is that they actually make more money selling that energy back to the grid in a similar fashion to like you were saying, they had excess energy. They went and sold it to other farms and other
Mhm.
industries around the area. But in first world developed countries, you can actually sell it back to the grid during peak hours. In most countries, US, Canada, UK, top countries of the world, they are still struggling to keep up with the power grid expansion. And so there are often times where it's a Friday night, it's a Saturday afternoon. There are certain periods of the time when there's more power consumption than usual. That's
Yeah.
also why, like, I've got an electric car. My power company tells me if I charge my car between these periods of times, it's cheaper, and if I charge it during the peak time, it's more expensive because they're incentivizing people to not use the power at certain times because they fear that they're going to go over usage more than they can provide. So what they
Mhm.
do though is they reach out to these farms that store energy from other renewable sources, solar, wind, whatever it might be, and then they actually suck the power from what they've stored and pull it over to the grid, and they pay them a ton for it. So their realized cost to create that energy or to store that energy and harness it might be 3, 4 cents a kilowatt hour. But then the city is willing to pay
Oh.
them like 12 or 15 because they need supplemental power. So a lot of mining rigs actually that run on these kind of, hey, I bought land in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to create a solar farm and then I'm going to run these machines. The city actually reaches out to them often and says, "Hey, weekly between Friday and Saturday night, can you please just let us use your power? We're going to sign an agreement with you and we're going to pay you 12 cents a kilowatt hour." And so now they basically produce power at X cost and they sell it back to the grid. And often they actually make more money doing that than mining Bitcoin. And it's super fun.
That's actually awesome. You're making more money just selling power.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, and it happens all the time,
Yeah.
and, I don't know if we're ever gonna come across something like that down in Paraguay because it does seem to be something that happens more in first world established power grid style countries,
Yeah, something
but
that's using a lot more. It definitely makes sense.
yeah, but it's always something it actually can enable because most people in the United States and Canada, mining at a scale is not an opportunity for them because the power cost is just so expensive that Bitcoin has to stay above certain levels for them to remain profitable. But some
Mhm.
people are playing off of, hey, you know what? I'm going to establish these relationships with these city power grid operators, and I'm going to make sure that, yes, there might be periods of time where Bitcoin isn't profitable for us to mine. Maybe it's not even right now. But if I get a weekly deal, a weekly contract with this power grid to supply them with power and to earn off that for a week, or every week for a couple days, then that might supplement them with enough cash to foot the bill for the power to mine the Bitcoin. And then a lot of people have the play of mine as much Bitcoin as I can, even if it's at a loss, wait for it to hit those new all-time highs, then sell it, make that profit.
Damn. Dude, that's like a crazy side hustle. Like it's just like something you could do on the side and you wouldn't even know it until you got to that point. That's actually awesome. I
Yeah,
had
it
no
is very cool.
idea. Huh. Well, that's really interesting. We'll jump back into the sale here. So let's start. I guess let's go over the minting here. So let's go over like the cost, supply, the chain, duration of the sale, how to mint. Yeah.
Let's do it. So I'll just go into the details of the NFTs in general. I'll also talk about kind of what you can expect if you hold one. I think a lot of people are going to want to know that. So there are currently 3,000 NFTs that are for sale. Obviously, not all 3,000 because we are about 50%, a little over 50% minted at this point. Almost
Nice.
1,600 out of 3,000, so 1,400 left. And we are actually ending the mint this Friday. So there's only what I mean, 3 full days really left for people to mint these NFTs, and we only opened it up 2 Fridays ago. So we're only keeping it open for 3 weeks, or 2 weeks rather, actually. No, I'm having a brain fart. 3 weeks, and, am I having a brain fart, actually?
Was it two
Uh,
weeks ago? Or was it 3 weeks
so we
ago?
lau well, it was actually gonna be, 2 full weeks. So we launched on the 29th. So Friday the 29th,
Oh
so
yeah.
a week Yeah, so it's 2 full weeks is how long we're keeping it open for, because we're working against the clock right now on making sure that we can deploy this equipment as quickly as possible. So it's in our best interest to raise these funds and then immediately purchase equipment that can start hashing right away. And that's for
Right.
multiple reasons. One, we believe that when the Bitcoin halving happens in 2024, we will see the price of Bitcoin run up, and we will see the equipment to mine Bitcoin also run up in price. We also,
Hmm.
though, know that when the halving happens, the block reward per block cuts in half. There is a lag period of time between when that block reward gets cut in half and the halving event occurs, and when the price of Bitcoin actually follows in the trend and goes up like it did, like it has done the previous cycles. And so during that time, Bitcoin profitability, mining profitability, might slow down. It also might come to the point where a lot of machines aren't profitable at those points. They turn off their machines, which then reduces the total difficulty. And since we're at such a low power cost, that won't happen to us. So we'll stay online while other people's come offline, or other people's machines come offline, which will allow us to actually mine more Bitcoin than we were before, albeit at a half the reward that it was prior. But it could actually balance out to mean that we're making the same amount of Bitcoin as we were before. We'll just have to see. But that's
Yeah.
why right now, since we are working against that clock, it makes sense for us to mine as much Bitcoin as we can right now when prices are low, when the halving hasn't happened yet, and while machine prices are also very low. So Bitcoin price low, machine price low, and while we still earn 6.5 Bitcoin per block, it makes a lot of sense to actually go ahead and continue to mine and mine as fast as we can. So come this Friday, you don't have any other time to get involved. The mint is currently on Polygon. It is $250 per NFT. If you do hold 5 as well, then you do get access to host a miner with us, directly with us. So we have power again at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Currently, we just offer our solution via NFTs to own a fractional or a fraction of the operation, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that means in a second. But in the future, in 2024, we will offer hosting, and that means that if you hold one of our reserve NFTs, which are currently sold out, or if you hold 5 of the current NFT that's minting, then you will be able to actually purchase a miner with us, and you will be able to host it on our location, and then you own the entire rights to the miner, and you can also see your own dashboard of what it's producing and whatnot. So some people are very interested in that. Our
Yeah.
goal with our NFTs though is to actually make them more profitable dollar per dollar than any miner you can buy. And that's due to our expansion plan that we have going on. And I can get into that in a second, but to not monologue, pass back to you if you got any questions.
Sorry, I was just enveloped there. That's crazy. I just had a total brain fart. You keep going. I was just thinking about something.
No, you're good. So what we're doing with our expansion plan though is the way that people look at what miners are the best ones to buy is they look at multiple factors, but the main factor they look at is dollar per terahash, which is price per performance. So how much can I spend to get a certain amount of hash rate, certain amount of computational power? If I can spend a lower dollar amount for a higher computational power, that makes more sense. And so that's the metric we'll look at here. Typically, let's say you want to buy a miner that offers 100 terahashes. It'll cost about 2 grand, and so typically, actually more than that, it'll cost about 2,500 bucks. So now you're at $25 per terahash. You spend $25 for every 1 terahash you get on that machine. The typical cost for machines are between $20 and $35 a terahash. The newest machines cost a little bit more, but you're willing to spend a little bit more on your cost per terahash because its efficiency is better. So there's another terahash per wattage draw, so terahash per power draw. And obviously, the amount of power that your machine draws, it costs more money. And so if you can hit the same level of computational uh, computations per second, the same amount of processing power, but for half the power usage, then your expense on that machine will be half of another machine that might mine the same amount of Bitcoin, but you've got to sell twice the amount of Bitcoin to cover the power cost. So there's multiple
Hmm.
factors to look at here. But what we're doing is we're purchasing the most efficient machines we can find, and we're also purchasing them at the cheapest price we can find. When we go through these rounds, that means that in essence, your NFT already will already be at around that dollar per terahash that you can find as an individual yourself. That's through economies of scale. We buy in bulk, we buy a ton of machines at a time. So our price per machine is far lower than what an individual can get. But once we finish selling these 12,000 NFTs, of which the first tier is currently live, 3,000, there's 4 tiers. They increase in price. So also, if you don't get in by this Friday, when we do reopen the next tier, it'll be at $300 instead of 250. So you got to get involved now if you want to, at the cheapest price. But what we're doing when we finish these tiers is we're actually reinvesting as a company into more mining equipment. And we're doing that just with our own company funds. We have been established now for almost 2 years. We have many different profit centers, and we're going to actually scale up those profit centers and use company retained earnings. So, company money after post expenses and taxes, money that basically would just sit in an account. We're going to use that to purchase Bitcoin miners without raising any more money from the community. What that does for us is we are playing on the trend that these Bitcoin miners might cost 2,000 a piece now, but could cost six, seven, eight, nine, or $10,000 when Bitcoin hits those new all-time highs. So if we stack our books full of assets that are appreciating, well, then it makes sense for us. We spend $1 million on equipment now, it ends up becoming worth 5 million down the road. Well, awesome. We can now sell that equipment and we can make $4 million that we can decide how can we creatively use these funds to further grow the operation. And so we'll get that we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but during the period of time that we're buying that equipment and hashing it, without any further investment from people that hold our NFTs, their hash rate consistently increases. There's going to be a point in
Nice.
time when their dollar spent on the NFT that you could buy today per terahash will actually fall to below $20 a terahash, between $15 and $19 a terahash, depending on the NFT you own. And that means that owning an NFT at the cost basis of mint, obviously at this point, I'm sure that the secondary market, they will be more expensive and it might not hold up at that point. But if you hold it now, you mint it now and you hold on to it, we get through expansion, your money spent per the amount of Bitcoin mined that you received will be more than any ASIC you can buy. So we will have hosting because we do want people to be able to hold their own equipment, own their own miner. They can play off the trends of the price appreciation as well. However, dollar per dollar spent, our goal is to make our NFTs actually more profitable than any miner. That's because your NFTs become a virtual miner. So they are, in fact, actually a fraction of the operation. They get their own hash rate, they get their own power draw, and then they're plugged in at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So as we scale up and add more machines, your hash rate as a fraction of the total amount of machines, it increases. So we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. I can't wait to scale this operation, see how much Bitcoin we can produce. We've already produced about 0.73. I think actually I'll look right now today. We haven't gotten the we just did. So we actually just got the payout for today. So we're at 0.74 Bitcoin total mined right now.
Nice. Dude, that's awesome. That was really cool. So like there's actual you guys are really thinking this head into the future, making sure that you're well positioned for everything that's coming and as well as being able to profit off that as well. I think that's really good. Kind of not just like hoping for the best, but actually planning it out, getting everything set up. So that's really good to see. Real quick, I remembered what I was thinking about earlier was the mining on your own. So how does like if somebody owns either the one NFT or the five, the smaller ones, you can host your own miner with you guys. How does that work exactly?
So we haven't released details yet because that is going to be a whole different structure in terms of like even in regards to the entity that we use for it. Because at that point we will be a hosting company and we do want to separate those legally. Um,
Right.
so we haven't released information because we do have to work through the numbers and everything. But the value for people is that most of the time when you go to host somewhere, you have to pay 6, 7, or 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So your expense is pretty high. What we plan on doing is because you hold our NFTs, well, we've already gotten an extreme amount of value from that person. We don't need to charge the 140 to 160 bucks a month per machine that many other hosting facilities charge. Typically about 150 bucks a month is their hosting fee. And that's, on top of the power and on top of any setup fees and all that stuff. So we want to
Hmm.
reduce the fees as much as possible and then provide this hosting at our awesome power rate. So even if it has to be marked up just for legal reasons to, 3.5 or 4, it's still far better than the 6, 7, or 8 cents a kilowatt hour that people are receiving right now with other hosting solutions. So that's the competitive edge around hosting. It will come out soon in terms of the information. The hosting will happen in 2024. We're currently building out our land for another aspect of our operations, which is an industrial refinery, which I don't have
Right.
to get into today. But on that land, because it's 5 acres, we are building the facility where we will offer the hosting. And so that's going to be what comes live in 2024.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. This is really, really cool. Definitely unique for lots of people, and I know tons of people that have been interested in, hosting miners themselves, kind of getting into it, especially with the Bitcoin halving coming up and prices looking good and stuff. So I think that's really interesting. I think that's really cool, unique, and a good value prop for you guys.
Thank you, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think it's a lot of fun to work on this and to see this grow. Uh, we've had so much interest and activity in our community recently, so I'd love to see the community grow too, and the amount of people interested in this type of thing. So yeah, we're just stoked, man. We're super super happy about everything that we got going on. Now it's just this week is the big push of, hey, no matter what, we're closing down the Mint Friday, so you better get involved. You better get in. You better mint your NFT because we don't want to wait any longer to deploy this capital into miners.
Yep. No, you got to be smart. You got to be quick. Got to take advantage while you can, while things are ripe and things are hot. So that's smart of you guys to just close it out, get the capital, and just put it to work while you can. Um, so with the operations down there, how does that all work, and who's kind of running it down there? How do you know that everything's all safe and well operated, well maintained, and everything?
Good question. So we have two of our co-founders actually living down there. So we moved them down there at the beginning of 2023. Um, it's our co-founder John. He's our CTO and main head developer, and he is living down there with his cousin, who is actually the person who brought us down there to begin with. So John's cousin Bert,
Nice.
he became one of our co-founders. He actually worked for the United States government for quite some time, and when he did that, he worked down in South America. And while he was down there, he was very well politically connected through his career, and he still knows a lot of very high profile political figures that are down in South America, which has helped us get to where we are because we're very close with the current administration in Paraguay, specifically with the president and the minister of interior, and it
Damn.
gives us a big competitive edge, yeah, for being down there. So
No doubt, man.
yeah,
Like
it's really cool to talk about.
oh
Sometimes I
yeah,
feel
we just
jaded because I talk about it all the time, but
yeah, it's just the president, not much. Like,
well, I mean, we've shown to our community. There's been multiple times where Bert has met with the president. The president's name is Santiago Pena, and we've showcased photos of him meeting with him. Really funny. He brought up a hat that says "Make Paraguay Great Again," and he was wearing that. And no, Bert's a kick-ass guy. He's the one running our antimony operations because he actually had constructed and built multiple antimony refineries in Bolivia while he was working down in South America for the U.S. government. So he's the one that has all the experience, both in the kind of lobbying side of things as well as the industrial sector. And then John is running the Bitcoin mining side of things. So since he's the tech guy, he's going to be the one heading all of the development and expansion of the Bitcoin mining farm. And they're on site.
nice. That's really good. That's actually like super good to hear. You got boots on the ground, people that are well established as well. So you got good connections and can, hopefully use those resources to keep things running and keep things running smoothly. So that's actually really cool. Fucking president. Like that's insane actually. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're blessed to have people like Bird on our team, and for just the amount of conviction our entire team has in making this shit happen.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. I can't believe that. So when did you guys kind of get things rolling, and when did you start mining?
So we went down there in October of 2022, so a little over a year ago, like literally a year and a week ago.
Hmm.
And that's when we went down to explore what could we do. And about a month prior, maybe 3 weeks prior, I had met Bert for the first time when I was doing some work with John, and Bert came to visit from Alabama, and we started talking about what opportunities we could pursue. One thing is that we were looking for where we could establish our legal entity for AlphaShares because we wanted to have tax advantage. We wanted to know what's the best structure for us since we are going to be, more or less an international organization. And so we explored that first. And one of the ideas he said was, hey, I love Paraguay. At the time, I mean, he has been living half and half in Paraguay and in Alabama because he's actually married to a Paraguayan native, and so that's why he's the one who opened our eyes to Paraguay. And we went to just go visit and to check it out, see what kind of industry was down there. He wanted to show us around, and while we were down there, we started exploring, what could we do with Bitcoin mining? And that actually came up a few weeks prior when we first met. And that was because we talked about Bitcoin mining and we saw some other projects that were mining Bitcoin. And we were wondering, what does it take to mine Bitcoin? And we realized that power cost is one of the biggest influences on profitability. And we noticed that in Paraguay, or Bert brought it up, Paraguay has an extremely low power cost. So we're like, let's explore it. Let's see what we can do. And while we were exploring it, we both found that yes, power is very cheap. We can get a license very quickly because of our connections, and we can also pursue antimony refining. So that was Bert's domain. He doesn't know, which he has learned a ton, but at the time he didn't know much about Bitcoin mining. Since being down there, he has been an absolute godsend in terms of the connections that we've made and the people that he's connected with so that we can get everything sorted that needs to be sorted because it's been sometimes massive headaches. So now he knows a ton about Bitcoin mining, but at the time he didn't. He just knew that power cost was cheap. And so that's really just the start of it. After we realized that that was what it was, we started developing a white paper and an agenda and a plan to execute on this. We released it to our community in February. We were teasing it throughout January. We then launched the mint in March, and a couple months later, we raised $3 million, and we got going.
Yeah, a couple months later, raised 3 mil. Nothing crazy.
Well, we're
That's
very, very happy with our community and the fact that we've been around. By the time we launched um, that new mint, we were already around for a year. So we've established quite a bit of trust in people over the year that we were around, and now we're almost at 2 years. So we're really happy about that. But yeah, I mean, we had never raised anything like 3 million before, so this was a big deal for us. Uh, Testament to the team and community. I couldn't do it myself, so I'm really, really happy about the people we have around us.
hell yeah! Congratulations and shout out to all the hard workers, especially Peanut down there. I see you, so shout out to him. That's really
Hell
cool.
yeah.
Quickly, so the real quick details on the like how when you're mining the Bitcoin, how do you actually return it to the holders, and then what is the expected return rate for you guys so far?
Great questions. So for returning Bitcoin to people, which really, the way that we like to talk about this, and because this, quite frankly, is the way that it works, is your NFT again is a fraction of our operation, and it becomes a virtual miner. So the Bitcoin that's distributed isn't like, hey, we mine Bitcoin, we're going to give it to you guys. It's more of, hey, your virtual miner that's a fraction of our operations, it mined Bitcoin, and you're going to receive it now. And so the way that that works, though, is because the NFTs are on Polygon, the first NFTs run Ethereum. All the same thing in terms of EVM compatible chains. So, your wallet address for Ethereum is the same as Polygon. And so
Mhm.
we can track who owns what. But Bitcoin is not on an EVM chain. Bitcoin's on its own network, right? So what do we do about that? Well, we decided that Polygon, it has wrapped Bitcoin, and it actually has a really solid liquidity pair for wrapped Bitcoin and wrapped Bitcoin in general. The actual company that made wrapped Bitcoin, it's a one-to-one collateralized asset. So any wrapped Bitcoin they deploy on a chain has the exact same amount of Bitcoin in holdings within their own you know operation. And so it's a full collateralized asset that you can actually basically have Bitcoin on an EVM chain. And so that's what we provide is we take our Bitcoin that's mined, it gets on-ramped from just Bitcoin that was mined from a pool, sent to a centralized exchange, converted to wrapped Bitcoin, and then sent to our smart contracts. And that's when it's then distributed to people. Depending on your holding, what NFTs you hold, you can then go to our dashboard, which is just mining.alphashares.io, and you can see how many NFTs you own, what your claimable balance is, and claim your wrapped Bitcoin right there.
Nice.
And then in regards to how much they make, this is something that's more difficult to say because
Yeah.
it's not, you know, you can talk about a dollar value, but a dollar value is only calculated off the spot current price of Bitcoin. And so what you
Yeah.
can calculate though is how much Bitcoin it will produce. And so that's something that we can actually showcase and we can talk about.
Cool.
Which I will
Okay.
actually put it in the chat here because I think that it makes it a lot easier than trying to just verbally say it. Actually, I'll just copy this whole thing right here.
I'll link that in the VOD too. That'll be really good.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll just put it in the AMA stage chat. So I put in the chat in here. So this shows each tier, it actually increases. So since each tier increases in price, we raise more money per tier. And because we raise more money per tier, we could buy more machines every tier than we bought in the previous tier raise. So that means that the hash rate expands with a exponential curve upwards. It's not a flat curve. So your hash rate doesn't stay the same. So as we get through tier one, which is the mint we're currently in, at the end, when we deploy the machines, your NFT will basically be a virtual miner that has a hash rate of 3.6 terahashes, a power draw of 144 watts, and then you're obviously plugged in at 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That can then spit out how much Bitcoin you mine per day, how much it'll mine per month. But the thing is that we're as quickly as we can going to be getting through these tiers and deploying more equipment. And
Hmm.
so it's a little bit arbitrary on how long each one will have these specific hash rates for. But our goal is for the long term, right? We're going to be around for years. And so we want if you can, I mean obviously look at it as conservative as you want, but the way we like to look at it is when we get through this raise, which this current raise is 3.9 million. The fact we've already raised 3 million means that we're very confident we'll be able to get through this no problem, no matter how long it takes. And so in the end, your NFT after tier 4 will generate 7.2 terahashes at a 250-watt power draw. It will produce about 0.000475 Bitcoin per month. But as we get through
So
the expansion, which is something I mentioned where we're going to be reinvesting our own money into more machines, our goal is to get to 350,000 total terahashes on the farm, which is then split amongst NFTs. And that's
man.
when you can start producing even more.
So getting in right now is definitely the smart play.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're going to start earning more quickly because obviously, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 NFTs, they don't start earning until we sell the NFTs, take the money that from what we sold, buy the machines, plug them in and get them online. Once they're online and they're running for at least, 3 or 4 weeks, that next payout will go to those NFTs. But there's some lead time with these tier 1 NFTs. It should only be a few weeks. 2 to 4 weeks I'd say for AMCR, our first $3 million raise, some people minted those back in March, and we're not making our first payout until today. So they had to wait a long time, but they also get additional benefits. So that's
Mhm.
just, they were our seed round. They took kind of the highest amount of risk, they get the highest amount of reward. But the benefit of this with tier one, two, three, and four is just a couple, 2 to 4 weeks short time after we mint the NFTs, you're going to start getting your rewards. So that's the benefit of getting in early. And in addition to the cost savings of getting it at 250 versus 300, 350, or 400.
Yeah, definitely like getting it now at 250 instead of 400. Plus the overall power just continues to grow as the sales continue. So that it makes so much more sense to just acquire one now instead of waiting. That's really
Mhm.
awesome, actually. So after that, where can people purchase NFTs after the sale?
So on our marketplace, that's where we have everything. So even the reserve collection, there is secondary trading on the reserve collection on the marketplace. They are going for like 1.2 Ethereum, I think, at the cheapest end, which is I think like 1700 bucks right now. And they did mint at $1,000 a piece. So the secondary floor on the AMCR NFTs are solid. I do expect the same to happen with these AMC NFTs, the tier one, two, three, and four. So whenever the mint is finished and you can't find any more to mint, they will be secondary trading on alphashares.io.
Cool. That's actually awesome. Yeah, you're gonna get everything all home done. Um, got a question here. Is there a contract for the cost of power, and is it a fixed or variable cost?
So yes, there is a contract. We've actually shown it to a couple people. Specifically, when we were launching the reserve collection, we had a big group buy from Hydro Whales. We're very close with that community, and I'm close with Sam, their founder. And so he wanted to do his due diligence, and so we did share that contract. It's something we do keep private. We don't show it to everybody because it is a legal document. We
Mhm.
don't need to show that off to everybody. But for the larger purchases and people that really need to see it, we have shown it. But yes, it's a power cost that is pretty fixed. I mean, it's a very slight variation. So sometimes, and what we're trying to do is actually get the power cost even lower, but it's between 3 and 3.3 cents a kilowatt hour. So the variation is very minuscule. It's not like there's high uptime and peak periods where your power cost doubles. Nothing like that because it's an industrial rate and an industrial contract. It's not the same as, residential power. Plus, in Paraguay, even residential neighborhoods and residential power contracts, they also don't fluctuate with the same type of peak and off-peak hours that we have here in US, Canada, and UK.
That's really interesting. That's actually very cool.
Well, when your country
Um,
produces like 5 times the amount of energy they can consume, they're like, "Well, there's no reason for us to do that."
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like so much more different compared to a first world place like here, especially in the US, where there's just so much power consumption needs all over the place.
Yep.
What is the duration, and can you share anything regarding renewal terms? I'm guessing that's all with the
Oh,
power.
yeah, no, we're locked in with that contract that we have for 5 years. We are looking to further bring it down, though, in cost. Because we're establishing such a large operation and we're also incentivizing other operations to come to Paraguay, and because we have these political ties, it's in our best interest to see if we can get even cheaper power. We'll see what ends up happening. There was a new administration change, which we're happy about because we're close with that new administration. The president was inaugurated in August, so very, very recently. As they get through, the first 6 months in office, and they can finally kind of swing back around to stuff like power and expansion of the power grid and how we can bring power cost even lower, we're going to see what we can do there. But it is 5 years right now. We actually have the ability to scale into, I believe, about 35 or 40 megawatts worth of power, which is far more than we need right now. When we get to the end of tier four, we're only going to be about 6 megawatts. So we could scale a lot larger. And 6 megawatts, mind you, is already about $4 to $5 million worth of equipment. So to get to 40 megawatts, we're talking, $50 million plus of equipment. I don't know when we're going to get there or if we're going to get there, but we've got plenty of expansion to get into and time to get there.
Nice, that's awesome. Um, so one of my last questions for you, it's up to you if you want to dive into it or not, but if you want to go into the antimony refining at all.
Sure, I could talk about it just briefly because I think that it's important for people that are minting these current AMC NFTs to know what this operation is and how it kind of ties in. It's not directly related to what an AMC NFT, the current mint, would earn. It is for an AMCR NFT because we did want to give them a bit of a bonus for taking that extra risk, and because they also helped us fund the creation and construction of the antimony refinery. But antimony specifically, it's a heavy metal. It's a precious element that is found when you mine really anything. It's pretty common under the ground in large mines and quarries, and it's often found when you're mining for other things. But what happens at big mining uh, facilities, I guess you can call them, just big mines, is that they test all of the ore that they mine. And some of the ore comes back with certain percentage purities or concentrations of different elements.
Yeah.
What we do is we purchase 30% concentrated ore that has 30% concentration of antimony. And then we refine that antimony into what's called antimony trioxide. We can also refine it, just depends on what the market demand is, to just antimony ore, 100% or 99.9% antimony ingots. They're both used for different things. They're a massive industrial product, though. So antimony trioxide is used in almost every single bit of construction for electronic components. So if you ever even take any wire you have, like there's so many electronic components, I'm sure, just around you while you're sitting at your desk right now. And if
Yeah.
you took one apart and you found a wire in there and you pulled the sheathing off, the insulation, and you kind of dissected that wire, you'd see that there is white powder within that wire. And that white powder that's in between the plastic sheathing and the copper wires that are internal is antimony trioxide. And so that's actually used as a fire retardant to prevent, capacitance fires from wires shorting, stuff like that. And it's also
Mm.
used in the production of almost every other bit of electronic componentry. So antimony trioxide is a massive, massive use case in electronic vehicle manufacturing, home electronics, personal electronics, everything like that. But beyond that, antimony ore as an actual pure ingot is used as an alloy creation for steel and lead. So it's a lead hardener, it's a steel hardener. So it's used in the production of, most infrastructure when it comes to construction, building giant buildings, railways, anything that needs hardened steel. And it's also used in the military industrial complex for creating bullets because it's a lead hardener. So it's used almost everywhere all the time, and
Wow.
it's trending right now upwards in demand. So that's why we're pursuing it.
Dude, that's actually crazy. I'm an electrician, and I'll tell you right now, I had no idea that that stuff was in the coating to help prevent like heat. That's actually really cool. I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, as I was saying, I was like, I wonder if you've had personal experiences with it because you're an electrician.
I've probably seen it a million times, but I had no idea what it actually was. Like, we never
Yeah.
really go
Some
that deep in school. It's usually just learning more about like the actual, transmitters, capacitors, different, transformers and how electricity current works and what's the best conductors. Usually never really go into like the protection of the wire itself and the sheathing and stuff. So actually learning about that is it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, there you go, and often it is, kind of, uh, baked into the rubber sheathing, but with larger gauge wires, you can actually, sometimes see it whenever you cut a wire open, especially older wires,
Yeah.
where I'm sure that you've seen them where, they're kind of wrapped even in that. I don't even know exactly what that paper is, but it's got, like, the rubber outer
Yep.
coating, and then it's got, like, paper, and then it's got, some powder, and that powder's
Yeah.
antimony trioxide. Newer wires, it's baked into the actual rubber or plastic that's sheathing it, but yeah, man,
Oh.
it's yeah, I mean, and I would love for anybody, to look it up, even you might be after this like, "Antimony trioxide, what is that?" But yeah, it's crazy, I didn't even know about it either until Bert brought it up. I started looking into it, and I was like, you know, whenever I go to like car events or, big events and I see someone driving like a $500,000 Lamborghini or even better, they're driving like a $2 million car and you're like, what does this guy do? And you end up finding his name and you look him up and it's like, oh, he builds trash compactors or, oh, he exports copper sulfate. Like, it's like, what the hell is this dude doing? Like, how did he even get in this industry? But this is what's so super cool about this is that we're bringing our whole community along the ride to do something similar. And I didn't even know about these type of industrial applications, how profitable they could be, what type of
Mhm.
industry this is, but getting into this type of scalable industry where you're producing tons and tons of product, or rather refining tons and tons of product into a smaller amount of tons. I think 40 tons spits out about 2 to 5 tons of finished product. Um, but that's where you really have these economies of scales to grow to pretty massive cash flows.
Yeah, no, that's actually really interesting that like you brought it up because that's something I've been kind of looking into and just noticing is more just like niche kind of operations or businesses where it's extremely profitable, but you've just never heard about it. Exactly like the antimony refining, like never heard about it, but probably an extremely profitable business like once you get into it. Cause yeah, hearing about the actual specifications and the use for the ore like, that's crazy. I had no idea. Like, mining is a really cool business for sure.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I love talking about it all the time. It's super exciting, and I also love when people get excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. One last question here from Elogish, and I hope I'm saying that right. Can you talk a bit about how the team is compensated slash incentivized to make the continued operations a success?
Yeah, of course. So with Bitcoin mining, we do take 20% off the top. So that's how that works is basically we mine Bitcoin. As we've been saying too, the biggest expense associated with mining Bitcoin is the power cost. We have a very cheap power cost. We've got a pretty substantial profit margin. And then after the power cost comes out, you have net mined Bitcoins. You got gross mined Bitcoin, you take out the power expense, you have net mined Bitcoin. You take 20% off the top of that, and the rest is dispersed to the community. So that's how we make money, and that's also why we're very incentivized to scale the operation as big as it can be. The bigger it is, the more our 20% is, and the more we can provide back to our community. So that's how we make money on the Bitcoin mining side of things, and on the antimony side of things. Since it's not something that we can really go deep into the specifics around finances and cash flow,
Hmm.
because with Bitcoin mining, there's precedent actually around being able to fractionalize an operation by making NFTs virtual miners. So we're fractionalizing the hash rate, the computational power. We're not fractionalizing the profit. And so we really want to make sure that we're not seen as a regulated offering, as something securitized.
Mm,
And so we can be specific around what our farm is going to look like, how much Bitcoin it can produce, what an NFT will produce, because your NFT becomes a virtual miner. You're sharing it in our hash rate. That hash rate results in Bitcoin being mined. But when we talk about a business operation like antimony, it has to remain private. And then we, as a company, we can make money. We're going to be able to pay ourselves as a team, and then we're able to provide a distribution from basically post-tax company retained earnings to our holders. That's basically just giving them free money. So they don't get to share in the profits to a specific degree. We can't really structure it like that, or else it is a
Yeah.
regulated securitized offering.
Yeah.
So I can't go into the details around, what percentage we take from antimony or whatnot, but antimony is also going to pay the team.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I think that definitely makes sense. The specifics, the regulations, you don't want to have that uphill battle basically. So just kind of having it as like a little bonus, I guess, is really cool. I definitely think the holders will be appreciative of that. And it's also pretty good for you guys. Make a couple bucks on the side. And yeah, I think the way that you're going about, paying yourselves, it makes sense because as the business scales, so does your earnings and so does the holders' earnings. It kind of just makes sense.
Absolutely.
Cool. I think that's about it from Illogician. He says, thanks for the transparency and details. Have to jump back to work. And yeah, thank you, man, for the questions. Have a good day, the rest of your day at work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I
you,
think that's
Logician.
probably about it. So is there anything else you'd like to share? Final thoughts, final stuff?
No, I mean, it's been an hour. I just want to give you a big thank you for having me up on here. We got to talk about quite a bit, and since it was just you and I up on the stage, we got to kind of even go on some tangents. But I still think that they were, related to what we got going on here. So it's a fun conversation to have with you, man. I'm just always happy to share this with more people. I hope some people, listen to the recording and get interested. And if you have anybody that reaches out to you specifically that's interested, just let me know. But I'm just really appreciative of you having me up on the stage today, man.
Hell yeah, of course. I love what you guys are building over at AlphaShares. Peanut's always a huge help for me, so I'm always, definitely down to bring you guys on, support what you're building. I always think, if you're building for the better, doing something cool and it's interesting and it's, you're actually building, not just throwing out some degen project or, the next bull run thing or whatever, then yeah, it's awesome. It's always really cool to see. And it's kind of related to what we're doing in a sense. I think real world assets and stuff that provides true intrinsic value is going to take over in the next bull run in the next coming years. I'm just seeing so much signs of it and so much evidence. So yeah, I think really cool with the mining, with like not even just the Bitcoin mining, but the actual antimony refining. I think it's all really cool. So my pleasure having you guys up here. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm just going to quickly finish up the recording here, and then we'll close it all out.
Cool. Well, thank you, brother. And yeah, we always love to be in front of awesome communities like yours where the focus is on real world activity, actually creating real value and bringing our people along for the ride. I think that this place is plagued with too much Ponzi and fake stuff. And I really appreciate what you guys do as well. And just again, a big thank you for having me up today. And I hope you've got an excellent rest of your day ahead of you.